CBS News changes anti-Georgia voter ID headline after facing intense backlash. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is learning there's a big difference between being a social media star and an actual legislator. Plus, CNN's Jim Acosta says the media are suffering from post-Trump stress disorder. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the show. Happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching us on Right Side Broadcasting for our debut, thank you so much for being here. We're going to start with CBS News and the media in general, because you know that they've thrown journalism out the window. It's in the trash. They don't care. They just want to be a propaganda arm for the left. They don't want to report news. They want to influence news. And they do that in a couple ways. One of them is the stories they choose not to cover. I mean, if there is strong economic news, the economy is just booming, and all you hear is Russia, 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 you might not know that record low unemployment is what's going on. And that's not even a hypothetical example. That's what actually happened in the Trump administration. Then you have the other side of it, what they choose to cover and how they choose to cover it. And CBS News is a perfect example, because going on right now, they got slammed for a headline which threw journalism and integrity out the window, and it just became left-wing advocacy. And here's the story. CBS News deleted a tweet Saturday after backlash over the linked news article that gave companies advice for how to fight Georgia's restrictive new voting law. 3 ways companies can help fight Georgia's restrictive new voting law, the now deleted tweet from Friday evening read. The article linked in the tweet also appears to be edited after backlash and was not tagged under any opinion-related section on the website. An archived version of the article displays the same headline as the deleted tweet. The headline was later updated to read, "Activists are calling on big companies to challenge new voting laws. Here's what they're asking for." So did you catch that? CBS News, supposedly a news organization, put out a story that is pure political propaganda. In this story, they're showing companies how to fight back against the restrictive Georgia voter ID law. That's what they're doing. They're not reporting news. They're influencing the news. This is a how-to guide on the left, how to fight back against this very bad Georgia voter ID law. That is advocacy. That is not journalism. And here's more. The article in question, written by CBS Money Watch reporter Christopher J. Brooks, gave 3 suggestions for companies to boycott Georgia's voting law, according to activists. The first section urged companies not to donate to the 2 Georgia Republicans who co-sponsored the bill. The second bullet point pushed for companies to spread awareness via television and social media advertisements, and the third note called for them to fight for federal law regarding the For the People Act. Activists are urging Georgia-based companies like Delta, Home Depot, and UPS to stop funding the political campaigns of Republican legislators behind the state's move to restrict voting rights, Brooks wrote in the article. They also want companies to put their brands behind publicity campaigns that openly oppose similar voter law proposals in Arizona, Florida, and Texas. This is unbelievable. CBS News' step-by-step guide on how to fight the voter ID law. And in case you haven't been following it, here is Georgia Governor Brian Kemp explaining what the law actually does.
Well, it's very simple. It makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Really, the 4 main things that I just want to make sure that people realize what the bill does. It takes the signature match process and replaces it with a voter ID, which is free in Georgia. It secures drop boxes in a better way than was done in the last election. Also requires poll workers to continuously count or tabulate the ballots until every vote is counted. And then it expands access for our early voting period, especially on the weekends.
So that's some of the highlights. The law actually expands voting availability, expands voting opportunities. But you listen to the left and they use words like harsh, limiting, restrictive, racist, and so much more. Joe Biden described it like this.
This is Jim Crow on steroids, what they're doing in Georgia and 40 other states. What it's all about. Imagine passing a law saying you cannot provide water or food for someone standing in a line to vote. Can't do that? Come on. Or you're going to close a polling place at 5 o'clock when working people just get off?
Jim Crow on steroids. That's Joe Biden. That's how he's describing this law that everyone supports. You look at the data, look at the surveys and polls, almost everyone supports voter ID. Yet he's going out against it, and he has a propaganda arm like CBS News to back him up. It's just ridiculous, and we need to fight back and keep on fighting. So next, let's talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But first, if you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified. We're making our push for 150,000 subscribers, and we can do it with your help. You're watching on my channel, just hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on right side, just use the link in the description or the button at the end of the show. All right, let's talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because she thinks she's a big deal, folks. And some analysis came out that says, you know what? Maybe not so much, especially at her actual job in Congress. So she's a social media diva. She's got this huge following that hangs on every word. She'll get on something like Instagram and say something like this.
Are you for real?
So by the way, that response was in reference to a question that she took on Instagram where someone asked her, hey, you don't talk about the border crisis or kids in cages anymore. Why not? And then she added this.
Because it's not a border crisis, it's an imperialism crisis, it's a climate crisis, it's a trade crisis. And also, it's a carceral crisis. Because as I have already said, even during this term and this president, our immigration system is based and designed on our carceral system.
That's a whole lot of crises out there, just not a border crisis. But here's the thing. She has this huge social media following, so she thinks she's important. She thinks she's doing a good job. But at her actual job of being a representative, not so much. And here's the story. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was reportedly among the least effective members of the previous Congress, a survey from the nonpartisan Center for Effective Lawmaking found. She introduced 21 bills the center defined as substantive, but the legislation got no action in committees, no floor votes, and none became law, according to the center, which gleans data from Congress.gov, the New York Post reported Saturday. Okay, let's see. 21 pieces of legislation, no committee action, no floor votes, no laws passed. Nothing. Absolutely zero. And what's amazing is she'll probably keep getting reelected. They'll keep sending her back to do nothing, but she'll be a hit on Instagram. Here's more. She introduced a lot of bills, but she was not successful at having them receive any sort of action in committee or beyond committee. And if they can't get through committee, they cannot pass the House, said Alan Wiseman, who is a Vanderbilt political scientist and co-director of the center. It's clear that she was trying to get her legislative agenda moving and engage with the lawmaking process, but she wasn't as successful as some of the other members were, even among other freshmen, at getting people to pay attention to her legislation, Wiseman noted. So, according to the article, she ranked 230th out of 240 possible Democrat legislators. 230 out of 240. When you look at the New York delegation, 19 of them, she is dead last. She is dead last in New York, yet she keeps getting reelected. And hey, she's on Instagram. She's got millions of followers, so I guess it's all good. So now let's talk about CNN's Jim Acosta, because I guess he's upset that he doesn't have President Trump to bash on him all the time, because he says the media are in some kind of shock, that they are in some kind of post-Trump stress disorder. This is what they're suffering from. So he was on CNN's Reliable Sources program, which, by the way, is the most inaccurate name for a news show that I've ever heard. Reliable Sources coming out of CNN. But he was talking to the host, Brian Stelter, and here's what Acosta said.
When you're asking me if I was run down, I thought you were referring to how I felt during the Trump era. No, I think that, listen, I think we're all dealing with some post-Trump stress disorder, other than that happy Easter, as he was saying in those statements a few days ago. Listen, as Annie was just saying a few moments ago, there are questions about why aren't Republicans getting on board with these Biden proposals.
Post-Trump stress disorder. See? The media don't know what to do. Now that President Trump isn't in office, they don't know what to cover or how to cover anything. How about covering Joe Biden? I mean, in that part, he said, hey, Republicans aren't getting on board with Joe Biden's policies, as if that's a big surprise. How about covering the policies, what open borders or job-killing executive orders will do, or raising taxes, or spending trillions that we don't have? How about covering those stories instead of wondering, oh my gosh, what are we going to do without Trump? Here's more from Acosta.
We did cover the news before Donald Trump came along, and we did it pretty well. And, there's going to be plenty of stuff in the news out there, and it doesn't have to have Donald Trump in the headlines for us to continue to exist, especially when he's putting out these statements. When he was president, he was doing things that were beneath the office of the presidency. Now he's doing things beneath the office of the post-presidency. He's not going to change, but we need to change with the times.
We need to change with the times. Oh my gosh. Do you really think that Jim Acosta is going to change with the times? Does anybody believe that? He bashes former President Trump for his behavior, but what about Jim Acosta's behavior? Folks, these people aren't journalists anymore. They are advocates for this woke cancel culture from the left, advocating propaganda. That's all they do. That's Jim Acosta, and he's lamenting the behavior of President Trump. They don't have him to bash around anymore. Look at CNN. Their ratings are tanking because they don't do real news and no one's tuning in anymore because the only thing that was entertaining from them was when they were bashing Trump. Now they really are suffering from post-Trump stress disorder because they have no actual programming, no actual journalism, and that's why their ratings are tanking. All right, next, speaking of the woke cancel culture, let's talk about what's going on in Portland, Oregon, because there is a high school that is about to adopt evergreen trees as their mascot, and evergreen trees may be canceled next. And why? Because it could be a symbol of racism. And here's the story. A committee comprising students, staff, and community members suggested that Ida B. Wells Barnett High School adopt the evergreens as a new mascot. In explaining the reason for choosing this new mascot, Ellen Watmore, a teacher and mascot committee member, said the evergreens are characterized by the life-giving force of their foliage, the strength of their massive trunk, and the depth of their roots in an individual tree and as a forest of trees. So all good, right? The committee received over 420 nominations, and evergreen trees emerged as the frontrunner. All they had to do now was get the board together and vote on it. No big deal. It's not like it's the Washington Redskins or Cleveland Indians or Buccaneers or Vikings or any of these names that people deem offensive on the left. They get so bent out of shape from a team name. It's an evergreen tree. What could possibly go wrong? Here's more. The Portland Public Schools Board of Education was set to vote on the new mascot last Tuesday, but Director Michelle DePass raised concerns about the tree's possible connotations with lynching in the early 20th century. I'm wondering if there was any concern with the imagery there in using a tree as our mascot. DePass asked the Renaming and Mascot Committee last week, according to the Portland Tribune. I think everyone comes with blind spots, and I think that might have been a really big blind spot. School principal Philip Hristic said Wells Barnett's family had been supportive of the school honoring her legacy, but no discussion was had with them about the mascot. The board has postponed voting on the mascot until its next meeting. What can you even say to that? I mean, the radical left finds racism in everything. What can be a mascot now? A butterfly? A bumblebee? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you can think of a mascot that is safe from the woke mob, the cancel culture, because they can find racism in everything. Folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour. Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified. And here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-minute news hour. And don't forget to check out GOPUSA.com for the best in conservative news and commentary. We'll see you next time.